complete with endocrine glands. Which endocrine glands we were doing? All of you will take out your volume also and your notebook also. We will try. I'll give you some questions from the previous part of the chapter also. Let us try completing first. Which endocrine gland? Check. Pituitary gland, are we done? Pituitary is over. Thyroid did we do? Pancreas did we do? Pancreas have done. So pancreas is remaining. Let us continue with the endocrine glands. Volume 1. Volume 1. So pancreas we were doing. So let us complete with the endocrine glands. Location when you talk about the gland. So what is the gland? Pancreas we were talking about. Let us continue with this. The pancreas. What is the location of the pancreas to write? What is the location you will write always? Location of the pancreas is behind the stomach. Likha tha ye? Location of the pancreas is behind the stomach. Hormones. What are some major characteristics of hormones? What did we learn the other day? Some major characteristics of hormones are what? What are some major features of hormones? What did we study? General features. Huh? General features of hormones क्या है? Huh? Pass through ducts.
Transported by blood.
Passes through ducts. Hormones passes through ducts.
Blood sent into blood.
Does not pass through ducts. Check what you have written. Check what you have written. Hormones never passes through ducts. Hormones will never pass through ducts. Always to remember the major concept of hormones is always they will never pass through ducts. They will directly be poured into the bloodstream. So we are talking about the pancreas. The location of the pancreas always to remember behind the stomach. Behind the stomach, we talk about the hormones of the pancreas. Pancreas is one such gland. If you talk about the pancreas, it is one such gland. It has got two sets of cells. One set of cell releasing enzymes. That part in life processes we have studied. Pancreas releasing enzymes like trypsin, amylase, lipase, all these things you have studied. No. Now we are talking about another set of cells. What are those set of cells? The endocrine glands, the endocrine cells. So in pancreas, the major group of cells, there is a cluster of cells, and this cluster of cells are known as the islets, and these islets of Langerhans. What are they known as? The islets of Langerhans, meaning these are the group of cells that the pancreas has. And this group of cells that the pancreas has will release two types of hormones. What are the two types of hormones? One is insulin, and what about the other? The other is glucagon. Two hormones of the pancreas. Islets of Langerhans are a group of cells that the pancreas has. And this group of cells are releasing the hormones. It has got another set of cells which will release the enzyme. So if I talk about the pancreas and the islets of Langerhans, let us talk about this.
Set of cells which releases
Hormones. Set of cells which releases the hormone. So when we are talking about any type of The endocrine set of cells. Now, if I talk about the section of the pancreas, there are, just now I mentioned, two basic category of cells always there in the pancreas. One set of cells releasing a whole lot of enzymes, and another set of cells will be there releasing the hormones. So, अगर enzyme है तो enzyme will be flowing by tubes, getting poured into the duodenum. और अगर hormones है तो hormones will be carried by the blood from one part of the body to the other. So I talk about the pancreas, and this pancreas will be now releasing the hormones directly into the bloodstream. So I talk about the pancreas, if it is a hormone, directly released into the bloodstream near the organ. Come to this concept now. This is very important. What are the two hormones and their function? What is the first hormone? Insulin. What is the major function of insulin? So if I have to talk about the major function of insulin, what does insulin do? The major function of insulin always is it lowers the blood glucose level. It lowers the blood glucose level. How does it do so? The major function of the insulin is to lower the blood glucose level. For example, if I have to understand that how does the insulin bring about this process? This is the bloodstream, and here in this bloodstream, if I just try understanding that surrounding there are some cells, body cells. What is this bloodstream supposed to contain in high concentration after we take a meal? We had our lunch, we had our breakfast, for example. And the carbohydrate intake is quite a lot. We had taken rice and roti and etc. etc. After we take a meal, and if we are going for a blood test within 2 hours after meal, any type of a food having high content of sugar, carbohydrate, we go for a blood test within 2 hours, the glucose concentration is always supposed to be quite high. The glucose concentration is supposed to be quite high. Now, after some more period of time, I say, after any meal, 2 घंटे के अंदर, if I take a blood test, so definitely the glucose concentration will be high. But after any meal, if you take the same test after 3 hours, 4 hours, now what? The glucose concentration is supposed to be much lower. What has happened? The glucose has moved down to the body cells. So the glucose concentration in the blood has become less now. Why the glucose concentration in the blood has become less? The glucose is absorbed by the body cells. How did the glucose get into the body cells? Why did the glucose get into the body cells? The body cells are going to utilize the glucose for the breakdown of glucose and release energy. The body cells are picking up glucose from the blood because of this hormone insulin. So that is the reason we are writing. What is the function of insulin we are writing? Lowers the blood glucose level. It lowers the blood glucose level. How does it lower the blood glucose level? Allows the body cells to absorb the glucose from the blood. That is a major function that the insulin does in our body. So whenever we take any carbohydrate rich food, and within 3 to 4 hours, whenever we go for a test, yes, the blood glucose level is normal. But before 2 hours, before 3 hours, if we go for a blood test, generally before 2 hours when we go for a blood test, definitely the glucose concentration is high. So first thing what I'm mentioning, after consumption of any carbohydrate rich food, we take a test after 2 hours, concentration is high. Again, repeat the test after 1 more hour or 2 more hours, the concentration comes to normal. But for an individual, the condition is the person has taken adequate amount of carbohydrate. After that, he goes for a blood test after 2 hours, concentration is high. The same blood test he repeats after another 2 more hours, then also the concentration is high. So when an individual consumes high carbohydrate and the concentration of the glucose in the blood is persistently high and the body cells are not able to absorb the glucose at all, what is this condition known as? This condition is known as diabetes mellitus. What is happening in this individual? In this individual, the glucose concentration in the blood is remaining persistently high. Whether the person goes for a blood test after food, after 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours, does not matter. Every time the blood glucose concentration is very high. What is the reason? The reason is the under secretion. What is the reason? The reason is the under secretion of insulin. The reason is the under secretion of insulin. What do we understand by under secretion of insulin? Secretion of insulin much lesser than normal. So you will get questions. What is the reason for diabetes mellitus? The reason you have to write under secretion of insulin. What happens in this condition? What is the major symptom? What happens to this person? Why is this person suffering from a abnormality? Because in his blood the glucose concentration is always high. The body cells are not receiving glucose. So what are some of the common symptoms that this person will suffer from? At least 2 symptoms you are supposed to know. What are some of the most common symptoms the person will suffer from? The most common symptoms the person will suffer from is the person will be extremely dehydrated. Why will the person suffer from dehydration? Because there will be frequent urination and the person is always, he will suffer from, the person is always tired and exhausted because the body is not releasing energy because the body cells are not absorbing glucose from the blood. And one major condition is the high concentration of glucose in the blood. So here we are talking about insulin and the relation of insulin with diabetes. So try understanding what am I speaking right from the beginning. I am talking about that whenever we take under normal conditions. Now whenever we take any carbohydrate food, within 3 to 4 hours time, maximum, within 3 to 4 hours time, this process starts happening in our body. And the glucose concentration in our blood has to be now in traces. This is normally happening in our body. But now that the glucose has constantly started moving to the body cells under all normal conditions, the body cells are absorbing enough amount of glucose. For a normal individual who is not suffering from diabetes, what will happen? A time comes when the glucose concentration in the blood becomes really very low. The glucose concentration in the blood becomes very low. So at that time now, is the person at risk? Yes, when the glucose concentration is extremely low in the blood, that time also the person is at risk. How will the body normally bring about the conditions which is suitable for carrying out all the functions of the body? So what will the body do now at this time when the glucose concentration is almost dropping, the body is constantly absorbing glucose from the blood? At that time, the body will start releasing glucagon. The pancreas will start releasing glucagon. Then what will glucagon do? Raise up the blood glucose level because the blood glucose level in the blood has actually gone very low now. Because insulin was so far released into the blood, insulin was bringing about this process. Insulin was bringing about allowing the body cells. What is the major job of insulin? Repeatedly, I am telling you. What is the insulin allowing to do in our body? Allow the body cells absorb maximum glucose from the blood. So the body cells are absorbing glucose from the blood. So ये absorb होते होते a time comes when the secretion of glucose or where the amount of glucose in the blood is actually very low. So before the glucose level touches the threshold and our body starts suffering from some shivering or low pressure or we become unconscious, ये सब होने के पहले, what will the body do? Allow the pancreas to start releasing glucagon. Then what will the glucagon do now in return is, what is the job of the glucagon then? The glucagon is always known to have a function just opposite to insulin. We are writing that the insulin lowers the blood glucose level. Then what is the glucagon doing? The glucagon is always known to raise the blood glucose level. So what does it do? It raises the blood glucose level. How does it raise the blood glucose level? How will the glucagon raise up the blood glucose level? By just one basic method. And what is that one basic method? By breaking down the glycogen in the liver, to glucose and releasing them in the blood. So this is the method that the glycogen does. Are we talking about the functions of insulin and glucagon just the opposite of each other? Yes. Insulin is every time lowering the blood glucose level, trying to keep the blood glucose level normal. How? Allowing the body cells pick up the glucose from the blood. But normally, when the glucose in the blood becomes much lower, almost touching the threshold beyond which the blood glucose should not fall, at that time, the pancreas will start releasing just the other hormone. What is the name of that hormone? Glucagon. Don't get confused between these two words. One is glycogen I am talking about. The other is glucagon I am talking about. Glucagon is the hormone, and what is glycogen? The stored form of glucose in the liver. So what is the function of glucagon? Glucagon immediately start getting released from which gland? Pancreas. Enter the blood. And now that it enters the blood, straight away where is it going to act on? It will act on the liver. What process will it bring about in the liver? Breakdown of glycogen to glucose, and in a short period of time, the glucose concentration in the blood will again increase. So all throughout the day, this process is constantly happening in our body. All throughout the day, we are not eating carbohydrate food every half an hour, 1 hour. Quite a number of times we are eating food in long gaps. We may have eaten breakfast by 8 o'clock and maybe by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock we are going to have our lunch. Or if 1 o'clock we had our lunch, maybe by 10 o'clock we are going to have our dinner. So not necessary. Every 3 hours are we eating enough carbohydrate? No, we are not eating enough carbohydrate. So ये जो blood में regular glucose concentration maintain करना, that is the job of insulin and glucagon. The moment the glucose concentration is high, insulin will bring it down. Once the glucose concentration is maximally down, the glucagon will come into function and raise up the glucose concentration again. Then again, when the glucose concentration is quite high, again the insulin will start working. So now insulin and glucagon, they are always known to be antagonistic in their function. What is the meaning? You will come across questions. I talk about insulin and glucagon. They are known to be antagonistic. What is the meaning of antagonistic? Opposite in their actions. One is known to lower the blood glucose. The other is known to raise the blood glucose. You get questions, name the hormones responsible for maintaining the glucose concentration in the blood. Name the hormones responsible for maintaining the glucose concentration. क्या लिखना है आंसर? दोनों, insulin and glucagon both you'll have to write. Because this is a continuous process happening in our body. One is lowering, the other is raising up. With reference to the abnormal condition, we are only talking about one abnormal condition. What is the abnormal condition? Diabetes mellitus. एक और दो symptoms you should know. And what is the most important condition?
इसके symptoms क्या?
इसके symptoms ग्लूकागॉन के ग्लूकागॉन तो हार्मोन है, इसके रिलेटेड एब्नॉर्मलिटी वी आर नॉट स्टडीइंग, एंड ग्लूकागॉन कंसंट्रेशन relating to any abnormality not major, ऐसे कुछ major abnormality नहीं है, नहीं. But whenever we are talking about insulin, insulin is a major. Quite a number of you must have come across people suffering from diabetes. So when we are talking about people suffering from diabetes, you also must have seen people who are suffering from diabetes, they are always exhausted. Frequent urination is a major symptom that they suffer from. They are always lack of energy. Why they are lack of energy? Their body cells are not getting adequate glucose. That's the problem that they have. The medicines that these people consume, what is this medicine meant for? Whatever medicine they are consuming, what type of a medicine they consume? For example, I say tablets, for example, a tablet or a capsule that they are consuming.
To transfer the glucose.
So now, did we ever come across that most of these medicines that they consume, what is that medicine doing in the body? That medicine is actually helping this process to be carried out. You get one more question in your exams, in your paper, that is, insulin is given in the form of injections. If anybody is aware, a person who has been suffering from diabetes for a long time, 5, 6, 10 years, doctors would generally not prescribe medicines anymore because the body has already become resistant to medicines. Now what for that person? Now intravenous injections to be given to that person. So now when we are talking about a person who is suffering from diabetes, maybe from birth or maybe for the last 5, 7 years, at that time the person will be given not oral medicines majorly, but injections. If at all you are aware, a person who is diabetic for a long period of time is supposed to take specific dosage of injections at intervals of time. 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, etc. So that is just for your awareness. Now what is the question you are asked in the paper? You are asked a question, why insulin, the injection or etc., why is it not in the form of a capsule? Why the person has to take the injection directly into the blood? Intravenous injection क्यों लेना है? Why that cannot be in the form of a tablet or a capsule? Can you tell me? Because directly through the blood. एक तो ये है concept. The other thing is this insulin that we are talking about is a protein. Most of the hormones are proteins. So ये जो insulin hormone है, that also is a protein. और अगर orally लिया जाए, then in the stomach, that pepsin will break down the insulin, and insulin will not be able to show its action in the blood. So this is the concept that you'll have to write down. You get a question, why insulin is not consumed orally in the form of capsules or tablets, but it is injected directly into the blood? Your answer preferably always is because insulin, which is a protein hormone, if consumed, will be broken down by the pepsin in the stomach and it will not be able to show its action. Even when it is entering the blood, is it entering as insulin? No, it is entering as any other chemical composition. Are you understand what I am speaking? Aaya samajh mein? So these two questions we will answer. Antagonistic meaning any two hormones which have just the opposite function. Which hormones are antagonistic? Here I am talking about insulin and glucagon. You get questions. Insulin and glucagon are antagonistic. Explain. So they are antagonistic. What is the meaning? Antagonistic matlab? They are opposite in their action. Let us write this answer. Low question likhte hain, then we will proceed. The first is, let us write, insulin and glucagon are antagonistic. Explain. Insulin and glucagon are antagonistic. Explain. Ego. Antagonistic hormones are opposite in their action. Antagonistic hormones are opposite in their action. Antagonistic hormones are opposite in their action. That is, insulin lowers blood glucose level. Insulin lowers blood glucose concentration also. You can write lowers blood glucose level, and glucagon raises the blood glucose level. Glucagon raises the blood glucose level. Full stop. Next paragraph. Insulin lowers, दो मार्क का है तो थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन करो. Insulin lowers the blood glucose level by allowing body cells absorb the glucose from the blood stream. Insulin lowers blood glucose level by allowing body cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. Whereas Kato, just let us continue the sentence completed. Bloodstream, and store the excess glucose in the blood as glycogen. Store the excess glucose in the blood as glycogen in the liver. इतना आया समझ में? Is this clear? What is the job function of insulin? Clear है? Next paragraph or next line you just write. Just one more line to write. Glucagon. पहले लिखो ना. Glucagon. Next line. Glucagon raises the blood glucose level. Glucagon raises blood glucose level by breaking down the glycogen to glucose. Glucagon raises blood glucose level by breaking down glycogen to glucose. Opposite functions आया समझ में? आया समझ में? So this is about the pancreas. Location क्या है? Hormones क्या है? Hormones के functions क्या है? Abnormal condition क्या है? And why are they known as to be in opposite functions? Why are they known to be antagonistic? This is what you will have to remember. Now, next is, after pancreas, we'll have to talk about the gonads, the two major reproductive organs. So we are talking about the gonads, the reproductive organs. Let us go to the next gland now. To talk about the next endocrine gland, the first let us talk about is the testis. What is the testis? Testis is the main or the primary reproductive organ in the male body. It is the primary reproductive organ. Primary reproductive organ in the male body. Only one function you have to understand. We are talking about the human only, the testis. Hormones are what now? What about the hormones? If it is the testis, The major hormone produced by the testes is known as the testosterone. Check the spelling. Testosterone is a major hormone produced by the testes that we are talking about. Testosterone. What is the function of the testosterone? What would the testosterone do? Testosterone majorly has got, remember this, we are talking about here now. Next again, when we shift on to the chapter on reproduction, the same thing, wahan pe fir se padhna hai. At that time, you should be not blank and look at me as if you have seen me for the first time in your life. So you should be promptly able to understand, remember, because ye same cheez us chapter mein bhi hai, and you get these functions for 2 mark, 3 mark questions. Points 1, 2, 3, likhna hai specific. Let us talk about the functions of testosterone. 3 major functions of testosterone we are going to talk about. What is it? The first is the development and the maturation of the reproductive organs. The development and maturation of reproductive organs, first function. अभी गुड नाइट हो जा रहा है क्या? अभी गुड नाइट है क्यों? Go and wash your face. Development, maturation of the reproductive organs. Number 2, development of the secondary sexual characters in males. Secondary sexual characters in males. What is the meaning of secondary sexual characters? The typical reproductive characters that differentiate the male and the female body. I would say extensive body hair, the heavy horse voice, then we talk about the broad shoulder, the narrow hip region. So these are typical body characteristics of the female, and the male that we are going to study, that is what is known as the secondary sexual character. The secondary sexual character. So always to remember that second point. And what is the third point? The third point is the formation of the male gamete. I introduced this word here itself in this chapter. The same again we are going to come across next. Formation of the male gamete. What is the male gamete known as? Sperms. What are the 3 functions of testosterone? Here in this chapter and the next, same thing to understand. 3 major functions of testosterone. Number 1 is development and maturation of the reproductive organs. Number 2, development and maturation during the adolescent stages, especially development and maturation of the secondary sexual characteristics. Number 3, formation of the gametes. We are not talking about any abnormal conditions right now as per the syllabus. There are few. We are not talking about any abnormal conditions now. Now, parallelly, if I talk about for the female, I talk about what about the reproductive organs? This is for the male. Then what about for the female? Ovary. How do we define this word? What is it? This is the primary reproductive organ in the female body. The primary reproductive organ in the female body. Also known as the gonads. Later in the chapter, we are going to introduce that word also, gonads. The testes and the ovary. What about the hormone there? The hormone, 2 major hormones. What is it? Estrogen. And what next? Progesterone. Take a note of all these words. The estrogen and the progesterone, the hormones of the ovary. When we are talking about the estrogen and the progesterone, You will be asked in your paper, simple question, one. Name the primary hormone in the male body. Name the primary hormone in the male body. We name the sex hormone in the male body. What to write? The testosterone. Next is estrogen. Name the hormones released by the ovary. Estrogen and progesterone. Samir, you don't have to look at each one of them. The word, when I'm pronouncing the word sex, why does it give you embarrassment? Because you are thinking out relevant, irrelevant things you are thinking. That's why it is giving you embarrassment. That is same like the word when I talk about the kidney and the nephron and the neuron and the brain and the cortex. That is absolutely same. So it should not, if you are thinking healthy, it should not give you any embarrassment. If you are not thinking healthy, then only it will give you an embarrassment. You are already 10th standard children, 10th, 11th, 12th standard children. You should be very comfortable with this word, but think in a healthy way. जो हम पढ़ा रहे हैं क्लास में ओनली उतना ही सीखना है, उसके आगे अभी फिलहाल कुछ नहीं सोचना है. So Samir, see that you keep the environment of the classroom very healthy. So now when we are talking about this, the names of the hormones and the functions. अभी फीमेल एस्ट्रोजन का फंक्शन अगर पूछा गया तो इसमें चेंजेस क्या होना चाहिए? फंक्शंस वही तीन सेम है. चेंजेस क्या होना है? डेवलपमेंट एंड मैच्योरेशन ऑफ द रिप्रोडक्टिव ऑर्गन्स, ये सेम फंक्शन है फीमेल बॉडी में. डेवलपमेंट ऑफ सेकेंडरी सेक्सुअल कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स इन मेल्स मैंने लिखा तो ये हो जाएगा फीमेल्स. ओनली दैट इज द डिफरेंस. सो फंक्शन सेम ही है, only the moment I start writing the functions of estrogen and progesterone, definitely for males I am going to write females, and here only this function gets changed. So what is the other function? The moment I think of estrogen, progesterone, there is another alternate function for this definitely and an additional function. So let me just write about that. So what about the third function now? What about the third function now? The third function, if I have to write, that would be formation of male gamete hai. So I will write formation of the female gamete. Formation of female gamete. And female gamete को क्या बोलेंगे? Female gamete, that is ovum. And number 4 is, if it is the female hormones that we are talking about, I said there is an additional function that we'll have to remember, and that is maintenance of pregnancy and childbirth. Maintenance of pregnancy and childbirth. This is an additional hormone function the moment we are talking about estrogen and progesterone. What are the functions of testosterone? What are the, so प्रोजेस्टेरोन एस्ट्रोजन के कितने फंक्शंस है? 4 है. टेस्टोस्टेरोन के कितने फंक्शंस है? 3 है. So these are the 3 functions and the 4 functions of the hormones relevant to the testes and the ovary. Clear, right? So this is about the endocrine glands when we are talking about human. What are the endocrine glands, disorders, etc. Let us take one question, then we move on to the coordination concepts in the plants. Few hormones only to study, 5 hormones as per your syllabus, and then some basic concepts to study. Now let us start with the hormones for the plants, but before that I want to give you one question. Let us take one question there. Write down number 1. If you are done with this, write down the question number 1. Name the abnormal condition. Name the abnormal condition that Priya suffers from. I'll just give you any specific name. You will get this type of a question. Name the abnormal condition that Priya suffers from, who is a 22-year-old girl. 22-year-old girl with a height of 3 feet. 3 feet. Full stop. Down syndrome कहाँ पढ़ा? मैंने पढ़ा है कभी Down syndrome? Full stop. Next question sub number A लिखो. ये तो हो गया basic part of the question. Sub number A. Name the hormone. Name the hormone responsible for this disorder. Name the hormone responsible for the disorder. Number B. What is the source gland of this hormone? What is the source gland of this hormone? Number C. How does this hormone travel in the body? How does this hormone travel in the body? Chalo, what are the answers? What are the answers? Whatever. What are the answers? What is the first part? Priya is a 22-year-old girl with a height of 3 feet. What is the abnormal condition she is suffering from? Dwarfism. She is suffering from the abnormal condition dwarfism. Next question क्या है? Next question क्या है? Name the hormone responsible. कौन सा hormone? Growth hormone. Name the hormone responsible. Hormone is? Next. Which is that hormone against which we had written dwarfism, gigantism the other day? Growth hormone. Clear hai? Growth hormone. What is the next question? What is the source gland? I think I gave you. What is the source gland?
Pituitary gland.
Pituitary gland. Source gland. For every specific question, your answer has to be specific. What is the source gland? Pituitary gland. Likha? Last question. How does Down syndrome इसमें कुछ है ही नहीं. Down syndrome number 1 is not associated with कि वो सितारे जमीन पर अभी देखा है क्या? हाँ? अच्छा. Down syndrome is not related with any of these hormones that we are talking. Down syndrome क्यों होता है? Down syndrome is a condition where just we are going little bit because they have a confusion. It's not there in the syllabus, but I'll just take 2 minutes. Correct. So when we are talking about a condition, when we talk about people suffering from Down syndrome, a child suffering from Down syndrome, a person suffering from Down syndrome will look like this. They will have mental retardation, slight mental retardation, improper body growth, physical and mental immaturity they will have. But what is the reason? Hormones? All these hormones are we talking about? No. In their body, what is happening? The number of chromosomes is extra. Instead of 46, it is 47. नहीं, ज़्यादा है. एक particular chromosome extra है उनके body में. One chromosome is more. So हमेशा ज़्यादा, हर चीज़ ज़्यादा अच्छा नहीं है. So when we are talking about this particular there are so many disorders. Now this is a major disorder. Some individuals suffer from where one chromosome, absolute one single chromosome is extra. So many genes extra, so many proteins extra. Metabolism is all irregular in their body. Major symptom है improper bone muscle growth, deformed bone and muscle growth, and also deformity in mental maturation. Mental maturation में भी problem होती है थोड़ा सा, but they are absolutely not not that they are not able to coordinate. They are able to coordinate, but different individuals will have different shortcomings. Various different type of shortcomings they generally have, but internally metabolism may be problem hai. Okay. So now we were talking about the concept of endocrine glands. Now these questions are done. Let us talk about the coordination in plants. What did we understand? The process of how does the hormone travel in the body? क्या लिखना है? How would the hormone travel all throughout the body? By the bloodstream. How would the hormone? It is a hormone. Hormones always travel by the way of the bloodstream all over the body. So क्या लिखेंगे for 1 mark? Hormones always travel by the way of blood and are not carried by any ducts. They are never carried by any ducts. Now that we talk about the concept of coordination, we are done with the major hormones and everything. The major part of the chapter is all done. The last part of the chapter that we are going to talk about would be hormones in plants. Does hormones exist in plants also? Yes, the moment I talk about, but there is nothing known as endocrine glands. There is nothing known as endocrine glands if I have to talk about plants. But is there anything known as hormones in case of plants? Yes. In case of plants also we understand a concept of chemical coordination. But what will those hormones be known as? Those hormones of the plants, what are they known as? Phytohormones. Do they have specialized group of cells in their plant parts, or does the plant parts have specialized groups of cells to release the phytohormones? Yes. So what is the definition of phytohormones? Special chemical substances released by plant parts. So when we are talking about, लिखा है कहाँ पे लिखा? स्कूल के बुक में लिखा, आज ही लिखा है, तो याद करके एग्जाम में भी लिखना है. So when we are talking about phytohormones, write down the definition. 1 mark definition that you are asked, and just 5 hormones we are studying as per the syllabus, nothing much. When we are talking about phytohormones, what is it? Special chemical substances released by plant parts. Special chemical substances released by plant parts. Special chemical substances released by plant parts which help them respond to stimulus, So that is the basic concept. Hormones for our body also, if I am talking about the human body also, hormones always help us show various different type of coordination. In a plant also, the plant body now, I talk about the stem and the root and the leaf. Do they coordinate with the external environment? Yes, they also coordinate. Let us try to understand how the coordination is brought about in a plant. In a plant, there are 2 types of coordination. One is known as the trophic movements. In a plant, there are 2 types of coordination. One is known as the trophic movements, and the other would be known as the nastic movements. We are going to come across examples and the basic concepts of this. The two types of coordination, we are talking about coordination in plants by the way of phytohormones. But yes, trophic, and in human when we talk about that is trophic. So when we are talking about trophic movements and trophic hormones, remember we had talked about some trophic hormones. An example we had done. What was that example of trophic hormone? Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. लिखा है ना वो आंसर? उसमें एक लिखा है वो आंसर. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. एक एग्जांपल के साथ हमेशा एक्सप्लेन करना है. I told you. What is that example I have mentioned in the answer? लिखा है कि नहीं लिखा है बताओ. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. लिखा था? You were absent the other day. You were absent, no? लिखा कि नहीं लिखा? नर्वस के आगे मत जा. वो आंसर नहीं लिखा. अगर नहीं लिखा तो क्लास शुरू करने के पहले वो लिखना है. That is very important. नहीं लिखा पक्का तो वो पहले लिखेंगे. इसके पहले लिखते हैं. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. Explain. ये 2 मार्क का very common question है. You will get to see in the volume also previous board questions में. देखो. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. Explain. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. Explain. नहीं. Pituitary gland is known as the master gland. Explain. देखो pituitary gland, a small P-shaped gland, a small P-shaped gland, P-shaped, small seed. Not P. P-shaped gland. मटर. उसको सब कुछ हिंदी में ट्रांसलेशन चाहिए. So now when we are talking about, right now, pituitary, a small P-shaped gland near the midbrain produces variety of hormones. Produces variety of hormones. Produces variety of hormones which regulate, pick up, not a problem, which regulate other endocrine glands, to secrete their hormones. To secrete their hormones. Full stop. For example, the other day I had explained you one example. For example, TSH. Bracket में thyroid stimulating hormone. For example, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Acts on the thyroid gland. And stimulates the secretion of thyroxine. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, acts on. Acts on the thyroid gland to release thyroxine.
Stimulus the secretion.
This was a question that we missed out, so I am giving you this.
Thyroid gland and stimulus the secretion
of thyroxine. So now, what are we left in this chapter is only to study the last part, that is the trophic and the nastic movements in plants. So we will talk about the 5 types of trophic movements in the plants next class. And listen, the next class, after completing this part, what is left? Genetics, did we finish? Genetics we haven't finished. Our environment we finished. So after control coordination, what is done? Genetic disease started, heredity started, reproductive system also not started. So we will start with heredity. Then it's a bit difficult for you to understand. We'll start with that. Then we'll move on to reproductive system analysis.
Sorry,